So, Namaskar and very good morning. Today, we all are gathered here with the purpose to disseminate information on research ethics as well as the research integrity, which is like very much important for a successful career of a researcher. And so, we are very fortunate to listen to Professor V Ramgopal Rao, who will be sharing his insights on research ethics as well as the innovation aspects and from his vast research career. So, thank you, sir, for sharing your learnings with us. To formally start the event, now I invite Professor Rao, Mr. Shantanu, and Dr. Indrapal to take seat on the dais. Also, I request Professor Shantanu to present a bouquet to Professor Rao. Now, I request Dr. Indrapal to just briefly introduce this session to the gathering.
Good morning, everyone. It's my privilege to welcome all the scientists, scholars, students, staff present out here today, and the people who are connected with us virtually at Chennai Center. And this is a live streaming this event. On behalf of CSIO, I extend sincere welcome to all of you present out there in this lecture. I've been pursuing Professor Rao regarding this lecture while he readily agreed to give this lecture virtually, but I requested him to kindly visit CSIO laboratory and deliver the lecture in person. So we are truly grateful that he has spared his valuable time and graciously agreed to visit CSIO, sir. Before I proceed, there is a saying, I don't know who has said, but there is a saying that scientists are very honest people. When an experiment fails, we honestly say the instrument was faulty. It is my duty as chairperson of Scientific Ethical Committee to briefly inform you that CSIR governing body in its 193rd meeting approved their guidelines, CSR guidelines for ethics in research and governance. These guidelines are to be followed across all CSI laboratories. They are also applicable to research scholars, PhD scholars, research scholars, GRFs, including SRFs, RAs, PhDs, ACIR students. Also the researchers receiving CSIR EMR grants, and also the distinguished fellows and Bhatnagar fellows. These guidelines not only define scientific misconduct, but also elaborate on the various forms and natures of misconduct. They lay down the principles of good scientific practices, which guide researchers in conducting responsible, transparent, and credible research. These guidelines also address important aspects such as gender issues, dealing with cases of misconduct, crucial areas such as intellectual properties, ethics in governance, conflict of interest. Together, all these guidelines forms a comprehensive umbrella that upholds the value of integrity, responsibility, and transparency in the conduct of science and governance within the CSIR system. However, despite having these guidelines in place, there are certain underlying factors that sometimes tempt individuals to take the shortcuts in their scientific pursuits, particularly in publications. One of the key reasons is that increasing reliance on the quantification of research output, where the value of the publication is measured through indicators such as impact factor, H-index, and other metrics. These numbers are frequently used for recognitions, career advancements, and other professional considerations. Today's lecture provides an important opportunity for all of us, especially young scientists and research scholars, to reflect on the values that should guide our scientific work. We are indeed fortunate to have with us an eminent scientist and academic leader, Professor V Ramgopal Rao, who will deliver today's lecture. Professor Rao is a respected figure in the field of nanoelectronics and semiconductor technology. He is currently the Group Vice-Chancellor of Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences, Pilani. Prior to this, he served as a director of IIT Delhi, where he played a significant role in strengthening research, innovation, and industry collaboration. I had an opportunity to interact with him in CSIR while I was in CSIR headquarters. We used to interact in several meetings, so I had this opportunity to work with him. Professor Rao's research work has widely published in leading international journals and conferences, and he holds several patents in the field of semiconductor devices and technology. In recognition of his distinguished contributions to science and technology, Professor Rao has received numerous honors and fellowships. He is a recipient of Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize 2005 and Infosys Prize 2013. He is a fellow of Indian National Academy of Engineering, fellow of all the three science academies, including Allahabad, Bangalore, and Delhi. He is a fellow of IEEE and the fellow of World Academy of Sciences. His leadership and contributions have significantly advanced research and academic excellence in India. Beyond his scientific achievements, Professor Rao is widely admired for his commitment to the responsible research practices, academic integrity, and ethical leadership in science, making him an ideal speaker for today's important topic. We are truly honored to have you, sir. I am confident this lecture will provide a valuable insight and inspire all of us to uphold the highest standards of integrity in our scientific pursuits. With these words, I once again extend a warm welcome to Professor Rao and to all the participants present out here. We look forward to an enlightening and thought-provoking lecture. Thank you very much.
Now I invite Mr. Shantanu to give the welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I think Dr. Pal has set the stage right for the speaker to actually look into this very, very important subject matter of ethics in research. So basically, guidelines are always there to guide. One needs to be guided. And not only that, if you are heart and soul into actually doing ethical practices around, then perhaps you don't even need guidelines. It's about deciding on a matter as to what is in the best interest and going forward in the right direction. So here is where the experiences part comes very important. Experiences as a leader, experiences in capacity as a decision maker in many forums. And who else but Dr. Rao can address all these, because he's heavily qualified across various years. As I have known him since 2008, he has been a mentor to me personally, and he has led many significant areas, whether it is academics or even building policy around science and technology, guiding CSR in many ways, and in advisorial capacity for DRDO or CSIR or major organizations. So I think there is a sea of information, a sea of experiences that we should really look at very closely to imbibe at least some of it into our lives and our thinking, where the science part, the technology part should outshine everything else, and the originality part should outshine everything else. Also, one more thing important to mention is the ethics that one has to have in terms of what I'm giving back to the system. So, in my opinion, if I'm getting salary and if I'm accountable to the government, I have to give back at least, if not 100%, at least about 60-70% back to the system. And Again, a system cannot be managed in a single, domain. It is a group work. It is an inclusive work, and there is a huge amount of, discussion about how one should really ethically guide himself or herself, listening to voice of all, and also being able to maintain the institutional mandate. So I think, a lot of these ideas come to mind when we talk of ethics, and really ethics is not something which is on a guideline, but more an inward looking thing, whether you think something is ethical and believe something is ethical, and then try to benchmark yourself to what the society is doing, the people around you are doing, and tread yourself in the most correct course that you feel is appropriate for the system. So here is where the experience part comes, and we'll be very honored to listen to some of the thoughts of this great academic leader of the country, who has actually shown it by his steering in the most ethical manner how one can lead great institutions. Thank you very much, sir, for agreeing to come here and enlightening us on these issues. I also would like to place my acknowledgement to our ethics committee, led by Dr. Indapal, and many of the other younger colleagues. I deliberately made sure that we have representation across all levels, so that any challenge which comes across any quarter should be threadbare discussed. And there are always going to be aspirations, which may be in different directions, but the whole important idea here is to lead the way forward with the most inclusive manner. Thank you very much again, and sir, thank you again for the invitation, accepting the invitation.
Now, I invite Professor Rao to please deliver the talk.
Thank you. I would like to thank CSIO, the director, and your ethics committee for inviting me for this event. I have given a similar talk in the CSIR headquarters also, as part of some event there. And so I will speak again on something what I have said at that time too. And as you have seen, I have spent all my time in these three institutions: 18 years at IIT Bombay, 7 years at IIT Delhi. Now for the past 3 years at BITS Pilani. So I will talk about what exactly is happening, and where are we headed as a country. But when you talk about ethics, integrity, and all of that, there are multiple issues. One issue is when somebody is doing something wrong, they know that they are doing it wrong, right? I mean, there is always that inner voice which tells you that what you are doing is wrong. But the way people justify is, nobody knows, nobody will catch me. So I think, nobody will find it out. And then they tend to take those shortcuts, and then go ahead and do it anyway, right? Despite knowing that they are doing it wrong. I think that is one of the reasons why, sometimes these sort of things happen. But I think that will not work anymore now in the age of social media and Google Analytics and Chat GPTs and all of that. You can be caught, if not today or tomorrow, but it could even be 20 years, 30 years down the line. Because once some wrongdoing is done, I think it will stay forever in the digital footprints, and it will be difficult to get out of it. If anything happens, then at that time you might be in some responsible position, but it can haunt you and create problems for the entire system. So I think that whole approach that I will do that and nobody will catch me, I think that we should now come out of. The second reason why it happens is everybody is doing it, so therefore I am also doing it, right? That is a more difficult problem. And
When everybody is doing it, if the entire culture in a laboratory is that, then you justify it, and you are not wrong in saying so. But that is where the institution needs to play a role, right? And there are institutions where it's a culture already. There are institutions which aren't falling prey to anything like that. I think we need to see what sort of steps and mechanisms are required. In BITS Pilani, for example, IITs are not, of course, everybody is publishing papers and all of that, but at least in IITs, the predatory journals, right? And then this fake kind of patents, that problem is still not very prevalent. So the touchwood until now, I don't know the way things are happening in the future, what will happen, nobody can predict. But right now, I think that is not a problem in IITs, right? And in BITS Pilani also, you never find BITS Pilani name in any predatory journal papers, retractions and fake patents. Those things don't happen in BITS Pilani. So I was also looking at uh, for example, in IITs, it's mostly the peer pressure, right? If somebody is publishing papers in such journals, the department, everybody will get to know, and then that person will have a problem within the system because there nobody can say that everybody is doing, so I am also doing. So since you are the only person doing anything like that, you will be caught, and then there will be a peer pressure and all kinds of problems will happen to you. Therefore, that system is self-correcting. As long as it's a peer-driven, things are self-correcting. In BITS Pilani also, fortunately it's the case, but I see now some signs here and there, right? I saw some papers in that, more retractions from some people. So what I did just 2 months ago was to appoint a committee, and it's a standing committee of some senior people we have, right? And what that committee will do is, librarian knows pretty much who is doing that. Like good librarian would keep track of all of that. So I told this standing committee every month you will meet, you will look at all such papers that people have published and you take action, right? The retractions can be because of multiple reasons. But if the retraction is, something which you have intentionally faked some data, right? Those people need to be punished. So while it is only 0.1% problem right now, but I want to nip it in the bud. Right? If you don't do that, seeing those 0.1%, there will be 1%, you will never even know when it becomes an institutional culture. So I think when things are small, we should address them. Once the problem becomes big, then you can't do anything. Because starting from the Vice-Chancellor down to faculty, everybody is doing that. You have so many Vice-Chancellors these days who have actually, got papers in all of those journals, what phase they will have to go and tell their faculty don't do that kind of thing. So that's not going to change now. Unfortunately, universities are beyond repair now. I think universities have gone down that path so much that now with vice chancellors who have all done that, now they have no moral authority to tell anybody not to do that. So therefore, it is not going to happen. So I think, but places like CSIR, CSIO, I think you have fortunately you are like IIT, right? So therefore, here, but when you see somebody, going in that direction, it's very important for institution to come down heavily, right, and send a strong message that it's not acceptable, so that others don't, fall prey to that kind of a thing. I think if it's Pilani with this 0.1% problem, I am already addressing that. I think that is what is also required. I have said it because I don't have it in my slides, so but it's an important point. I will probably make a slide on that sometime. So the current status of Indian R&D. Those of you who have heard my talks, I think know this. I keep updating this slide, but this is what it is. So we are chasing numbers now. I think we are all chasing some metrics, right? And India is also chasing numbers. So we are first in number of institutions. There are more institutions in India than China, in fact. And then, but we are not number one in enrolled students, right? We are second in enrolled students, way behind China. China has gross enrollment ratio above 50% in the higher education. India has it 27%. So our number of students going to universities is at half a mark compared to China. US has gross enrollment ratio 80% and all of that, right? But they don't have so many institutions. We have more institutions. The reason for that is our institutions are so tiny. Right? I mean, yesterday, where was I? I keep traveling so much now, I forget where I was. It was in Ahmedabad. They have created a biotechnology university. It's an entire Gujarat Biotechnology University, GBU. They have 30 faculty. The whole university has only 30 faculty. and their sanctioned strength is 37 faculty, right? And look at JNCSR. I am chairman of the JNCSR Council now, like 40 faculty, right? They get 100 crores of funding every year, 40 faculty in the whole institute. So our good institutions have just remained so tiny. They have all the facilities, they have everything, but when it comes to sanction for positions, that the DOPT, all of them come down heavily. I know that CSIO is also facing a similar problem. So you create infrastructure, you create capital expenditure is not a problem. One time you can get it, but when it comes to people, right, the governments are backing down on approving positions. As a result, institutions have remained small, and that is a problem with Indian, systems all over, whether it's CSIR labs or IITs. 23 IITs will admit this year 17,000 students. 23 IITs. One US university of comparable quality will admit that many students, right? So 23 IITs admitting 17,000 is tiny for a country of the size of India, right? And compared to US universities, it's nowhere close to what it should be, and that's a problem again. But IITs do get a lot of money, but when it comes to sanctions again, then there are other kinds of issues there. I think that is something that needs to change. And we are publishing lots of papers. We are third in the world now for research output. I mean, now is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? One can actually judge. But 6 patents. We were not filing enough patents. Government said we should file more patents. Now we are filing so many patents, right? So now we are 6th in the world for patents, right? And lots of patents are being filed, but that is filings. These are not these are not granted patents, right? So and the 9th for citations. So, but the problem with all these 3 metrics is they can be gamed very easily, right? You can publish papers today. The situation is if you have a paper, you can find a journal which will publish it, right? And now those days are gone when you are struggling to publish a paper and all of that. You show me the paper, I will tell you a journal where you can publish it, because everything has become so commercial driven now in terms of publications. So therefore, and once you file a patent, I know institutions where you cite my paper, I will cite your paper, right? And there are all these kind of coteries which are getting formed, and of each other citing papers, and then your citations will also go up, right? So these are also things which can be easily gamed right now. So these are all a lot of wrong things are happening when it comes to these numbers. But this tells the real story. Innovation. Innovation is what have you done out of this knowledge? If you are the world's 3rd largest knowledge generator, right? What have you done with this knowledge, right? And this innovation is generating value for your knowledge, generating value for your research. But this innovation, we are at least 39th position because of IT. You take away the IT industries, right? Then what you are left with are only Marwadi companies. Other than that, there is nothing, which is a knowledge-driven kind of a sector in this country, right? So this innovation, again, you need to take it with a pinch of salt that it's all about the IT, which is driving a lot of new age industries in this country, right? And then we are not spending enough money. Government among some 130 countries, India ranks 54th when it comes to percentage GDP allocation for R&D. Right? Our expenditure is so small. Now, it being 54th in terms of funding, if you are 3rd in terms of research output, something is wrong. I mean, these things don't really add up, very well. So you're not spending money; you are publishing papers. So how are you able to publish so many papers without spending in the R&D? Right? Somebody actually has to get worried right now. So how we are able to write so many papers? And we don't even have enough scientists. Right? As I said, number 1 in number of institutions, but we are much smaller compared to US and China when it comes to enrolled students, is because of this fact that we are 83rd in the world today among some 130 countries as number of researchers per million population. We don't have enough scientists right now because of all these norms that you start an university with a 30 faculty as your target. I think is what is happening right now. So we don't have enough researchers per million population. And academia industry collaboration, let's set the better. I think there's hardly anything which is noteworthy that is happening between academia and industry. And as per the same report, the report that ranked India at 39th, right, which everybody keeps quoting, it is 38th now. In fact, we have improved by 1 more point. is also the same report which gives all of these numbers which we don't talk about often. Because it's a 100-page report, and it actually has much of this data too. And so that is where the problem is. Though we are third, but we are way behind China and US. In fact, if you look at China, right, you can actually go to Peking University website and see how much of funding China has given to Peking University. What China gives to Peking University, one university in China, right, is our entire MHRD budget. You can actually check the data online. So that is the difference in scale between how China is funding their universities, how India is funding its universities. So obviously, China is what US is worried about, and it's not India that anybody is really worried about right now, because China has got 20 years of consistent investments in R&D. Now they think they can do anything, right? And now every country is worried about China, and that is what you need. 20 years of consistent investments into R&D, what has put China at that number 2 spot, and India hasn't even started. I think we haven't even begun right now, and that's our problem. And while government is not spending money, even Indian industry is also not spending money, and R&D investment by Indian industry is 0.2% of GDP right now. These are the latest figures where our Indian industry is spending 0.2% of GDP. And in comparison, US industry, which is 10 times larger economy, we are 3 trillion and US is like 30 trillion economy, they spend 2.7% of GDP by their industries, right? So industries do a lot of R&D to develop new products, new processes, new technologies. That is how a lot of great things happen in those universities. Even South Korea spends 3.9%, and even United Kingdom spends 2.1% of their GDP. Right? I think that investment by industry is what enables new product development, new technologies, and all of that. In India, neither is government spending money nor industry spending money. So this is, but then we all want to be like the top, right? Everywhere. Recently, somebody said Indian science is African budgets, American ambitions. Right? We want to be like America, but our budgets are African, right? That's exactly the situation with Indian things now. And there's a quote now making round. I have not made that quote, so don't attribute it to me. But African budgets, American ambitions, the Chinese opacity, right? Russian methods, and Indian petty politics. That is what summarizes the Indian science and technology ecosystem right now. So I think we need to get out of it at some point. We need to reform education. We need to do a lot of things when it comes to the higher education, particularly, and the science and technology establishment. And I hope time will come. I think probably the problem is large enough now that I think with everybody now highlighting that, hopefully something might happen. Right? So that is where it is, and that is where I talk about conscientious research and conscious innovation. I think we all, as scientists, we are in good institutions, so therefore we need to lead the way. I think we should not be like all those people who are spoiling the reputation of the country. So we need to be, looking at the conscientious research. To me, is a research culture grounded in honesty, rigor, and ethical responsibility. I think that is what a good research is all about. And conscious innovation is about being aware of societal consequences of what we create. Right? It means designing technologies that are inclusive, sustainable, and humane. So I think that is what we should be focusing on more and more right now, from elite institutions like CSIR labs and or other good institutions in the country. And the patents thing, as I told you, I think we are filing too many patents, right? And but the grant rate now of many of these patents, some universities are, there is one university, I think that's here only, I guess. So you have published, that university has filed more patents than all IITs together. Right? All IITs together. I said, thoda to sharm aana chahiye. I mean, when you say that, and when you publicize that we have filed more patents than all IITs together, you should be a bit ashamed of that. You should be worried about it actually, right? How is that we are able to publish so many patents, right, compared to all IITs together? Because look at the difference in funding also. The research, innovation, all of that requires those inputs too. Without those inputs, if you are able to do that, then, and if you are claiming that you have done something great, I think that the leadership needs to really worry about it. Right? I mean, so it's not possible, but that's what is happening, and it's also one of the highly ranked institutions now in the QS, the American, the QS world rankings. They are ranked because they look at all of these metrics and they don't ask those questions. So even our NIRF was not asking those questions. So now we have all put and have written letters everywhere and been putting pressure on NIRF, our national ranking. And now last year they started to give negative marks for that. And hopefully this year they will give even more negative marks for that. And I think that's something that needs to happen. The patent application, so this is one thing, but there are a lot of patent frauds, right? The gaming the patent ecosystem, duplicate patents, patent clustering, filing without commercial intent, ghostwriting patent drafts. I mean, I am told, people shared with me that you can buy your slot in a patent, right? And by paying money, you can be the number one author, or you can be number one inventor, or number three inventor. You can buy, your place on the patents right now, and people are openly making business out of it, and they think it's a good startup idea. So that's a problem now. So the startup thing also, we have taken it to the next level right now. So and then there are, but I thought these are all restricted to Indian patents, but people have even figured out a way to file even international patents. So therefore, when you see a CV, right, with a huge H index, right, lots of patents, now you actually get worried, right? You don't really, take it as anything positive kind of thing. And this is what has happened right now. So this is a big concern for the country. And so I have the Indian Patent Office also has cautioned recently that against fraudsters seeking money to facilitate IP applications. And there are a lot of challenges right now in some of these. And I have been writing about it, right? As you know, I write a column for Times of India at some interval. So I have been highlighting many of these issues. The retraction crisis is a big challenge in India. India is among the top 2 countries in the world when it comes to retractions, right? People have published a paper and retracted it because somebody said, the all fake data. And that India stands number 2 right now in the world. And many countries, Pakistan also leads the way. And then the UAE also, those universities are also doing something very similar to that. And NIRF, our own ranking agencies, I wrote a paper in Current Science on unpacking inconsistencies in NIRF ranking. I keep fighting with the NIRF guys on all of these things. So slowly they are listening right now, because NIRF is done by Government of India, right? And they cannot behave like private agency ranking. So they have to have proper metrics to judge institutions, because it is driving institutions in a direction which is not good for the country. And if a government is ranking and driving institutions in a wrong direction, I think everybody needs to point it out. And I have been writing, in fact, the NAC also I wrote about ranking and citation rat race is hurting India's academic reputation. These are all articles, and I share it. This was my last article last Sunday. Viral robot video shows why Indian universities need less spin and more substance. And I think this is the problem, because everything is driven by the marketing people now. In many of these institutions, it's not, for example, that problem that was there in the AI summit, the robot thing, right? Why did it happen? Why it wouldn't happen in CSIO? Why it happened in that university? In CSIO, when you exhibit something in a major exhibition like the AI summit of Government of India, you would send a scientist who had actually worked on the technology to explain what has happened, right? It would not even occur to you that you would send some marketing person to explain your innovation. That won't happen, right? In any good institution, you would not send a marketing person to explain the innovation done by a faculty member. You would send a scientist who has actually worked on that, and a scientist would never claim that. The scientist knows what can be done, what cannot be done, right? That is a problem. So when institutions rely excessively on marketing, right, to create an image, and then these are the kind of problems that actually happen. And so that is where the fundamental problem lies. In all these universities, their marketing budgets are much more, I know these figures are much more than their research budgets. And that is when they would give a full Times of India full page advertisement, but their faculty are struggling for funding to go to a conference where they have a paper accepted. I think That is what, when marketing becomes more than what is actually happening, then these issues happen. I think when a measure becomes a target, this is just to be a good measure. Finally, that's exactly whether it's your CSIR assessments or the national, publication thing. Everywhere it's the same problem. The moment you are judged by the number of papers you have written, the number of patents you have filed, then it doesn't remain a good measure, because people will find ways to, do all of that, right? Meet all the targets. Nothing might have happened on the ground, but you will meet all the targets. So institutional, the balance sheet will look good, right? But the institution may not have committed, may not have, contributed in any meaningful way to any of those kind of domains. This is what is currently happening, and so that's a big challenge that exists in the country. The national institutional ranking framework, I think this is a big problem. I think they are doing all the wrong things right now, and hopefully, with all the things that are being highlighted, the 30% is for research right now, and how many papers you file, how many patents you file. I think some of these are basically hurting the entire metrics part of it. And the annual fluctuation rate, I looked at difference between NIRF and NIRF 22. The trend has not changed, but beyond the top 20 institutions, right, in NIRF, the rest of it is just noise. If you look at the NIRF rankings, one day you are, the change can be from 1 year to next can be 30 points, right? 30 ranks can change here. You can see minus 32, plus 20, 50 ranks changed in 1 year. What would change in an institution in 1 year? That's essentially they have figured out, how to game the system. And then once they figured out that methodology, they have basically become better at it. So I think these are the things, with that kind of fluctuation across institutions, it's a clear sign that something is wrong, right? And that is what we need to, address. And that is where I've written about 2 years ago on negative marking for lack of research integrity. All of this can be found now through databases, and which is what they said they did last year. And but this year they are further strengthening that, and hopefully, slowly we will move towards that. But I think, with all those things in metrics, while we seem to be number 3 in the world and all of that, but have we built any world-class institutions, right? How do we even build those world-class institutions? How do we build those Stanfords and MITs out of India? That is what we should be asking as a question. So it is not about those metrics which we know how to now achieve, but it's all about the real innovation, that goes towards building that excellence, right? That is what we need to be doing. The first problem is, whether it's a scientist or a faculty member. I recently said building a university is not university buildings, right? It's the faculty who build great universities, and whether it is in CSIR kind of system, it's the scientists who are the stakeholders. I think without scientists, there is no system. I often used to make this statement that if you take IIT Bombay, those 700 faculty, and create, take them to Ethiopia, they can create IIT Delhi in Ethiopia, right? So it's the people, it's not the buildings, right? So the fancy buildings never make a great university, it's the faculty. And the problem with now the faculty and scientists in many institutions is we are doing too many things, right? From posting on social media to conducting conferences to guiding PhD students to counseling to entrepreneurship to patent filing, mentorship, you name it. Somebody actually, when he presented it in some place, they added 3 more things that they are doing better. So that is what it is. In CSIR, maybe you are slightly better, that you don't have to probably do entrepreneurship and all that, but you need to license technologies, you need to work with industry that is equivalent of that. It's not physically possible. And the reason why this has happened is we have destroyed the staff system in our universities and institutions. It's faculty and students. There is nothing in between, right? At least in IIT kind of a system, you never hear about any staff who are actually helping the faculty in doing what they are doing. So it's other than the faculty and students, all the middle level thing. We have demoralized them so much over a period of time that they have given up, right? Finding a government job, retirement is the only thing they look forward to, right? That is what has happened with our staff, because their pay scales, their service conditions, all of them year after year, right, have been degraded. That they finally lost motivation. Whether I work or don't work, if nobody recognizes me and if I am not going to get a promotion after, unless I spend 10 years, what motivation will they have? Because all those pathways for, identifying excellence and promoting them have all been taken away in the name of transparency, right? If you, in IIT Delhi, we used to have Kumar Mangalam Birla as chairman board of governors, right? And the Birla sitting there, right? And the discussion in the board meeting is 200 rupee increment for a staff member, and board will spend 1 hour in deciding whether we should have the 4,800 grade or 4,600 grade, and the ministry coming down heavily on institute saying you send it to ministry, we will examine right after 1 hour of discussion. That is exactly what happens in all these kind of board meetings right now. So that is how we have demoralized the staff so much. The faculties will have some motivation, at least in IITs, but the staff will completely demoralize. As a result, the only two cadres left are the faculty and students. So anybody who joins in IIT system, right, in the middle layer, they either want to become faculty or they want to become students. They never want to be staying in that position right now. So that is the reason why you don't have, when we used to host foreign delegations, right? I mean, whenever you see a foreign delegation visiting for any serious discussion, along with faculty, you will have staff accompanying them, and these staff will hold, some associate dean kind of, very nicely looking kind of positions, and they will behave like faculty. They feel with all the empowerment, they discuss and do all of that, right? And when our delegations go, it's only faculty. Other than faculty, nobody can ever be. If you find a woman, well and good. But otherwise, 4 or 5 male members going and discussing and coming back is how most of these delegations happen, because there is nobody other than the faculty cadre, who can initiate those things. I think that is again comes down to autonomy, right? So when you take away the autonomy in the name of transparency, in the name of whatever uniformity and all of that, then the institutions lose that motivation, and that's exactly what is happening to IITs now, and exactly what is happening to even the CSIR labs too. So I personally feel the national education policy is something which is great that has happened in the country. And if you read the document, it's written by some of the finest people. I know that Manjul Bhargava from Stanford, now he's with Princeton. Manjul Bhargava took a sabbatical to actually write our national education policy. Right? Manjul Bhargava is a Fields medalist and one of the finest mathematicians. So I called NEP a moral movement for India. Right? What is this moral movement? If you look at the Indian HEIs, right, we are all doing research, right? All of that is happening fine. And but how do we do research? Most of our research is primarily driven by this North America and European model. Somebody starts something there and we join the bandwagon. And then if they have published 10 papers, we will write 100 papers, right? That is how most of our research has been so far. But we are not originating any new field. We are not, doing anything new, since independence. I mean, there was a time around independence, the same country has produced those Bose, Saha, all of those great stalwarts, who could have easily won Nobel Prizes, right? There are at least 5 Nobel Prizes India missed in the country, and for whatever political reasons it was. But in India, that level of work was happening, around that time. And once we, started to take away that autonomy, take away that empowerment from institutions, right, and then lost trust in the whole system, right, then too many rules came in, and then things became pretty bad in the thing. And what we could do 10 years ago, we cannot do that now. And what we could do 50 years ago, you cannot do it now. Professor C.N.R. Rao became a full professor at the age of 28 years at IIT Kanpur. Today, no director can even think of making anybody an associate professor at 28 years. So that you have to spend 5 years, and then you have to spend 4 years, and you have to do all of this before you become a professor. But that empowerment the directors had at that time, 50 years ago. But we have lost all of that kind of autonomy, to all the rulers right now. But if you look at US, US was not the center of excellence. US was not the country, in 19th century, right? It was always England and Germany. If you look at the early Nobel Prizes, right, they were not won by the US scientists. In fact, they were all won by the Britishers and also the Germans, right? And in fact, the German currency notes, when I was doing my PhD there, used to have Nobel laureates on their currency notes. and then along with the work description of what they have done, each German currency note had a Nobel laureate along with their work. That's how they valued their Nobel laureates. And so England and Germany were the most scientifically advanced nations. They were winning all the Nobel prizes in the 19th century. The US, basically, their scientists were following what was happening in England and Germany, right? So there was nothing much happening in the US, and so they do all the work, and US would pick up some of those threads and then will do research. And exactly what is happening in India today is what was happening in the US in the 20th century, right? And in England and Germany, if you look at those early days, they were primarily oriented in classics, theology, and natural sciences. So US was also doing the same thing. Entire thing changed in the US with the land grant university model. That land grant university act is actually known as the Morrill Act, right? In 1862, Senator Morrill introduced this land grant university model where that was a turning point for the US. What basically they said was there was a lot of land in the states, right? All over the US, it's such a large country. What the federal government did was to procure the land, right, and give each university enough land, like 10,000 acres to Iowa State, right, and 20,000 acres to Stanford. So all the great universities you see today, MIT to many of them, are all land grant university model. So they were all given land, and they can commercialize that land, they can sell that land to build a university, right? That's how they were able to attract foreign talent by using this land as an asset, which was provided as the land grant model, and they were able to build those universities like that. You can actually go to the web page and search this land grant university thing. You find a lot of very interesting things in the land grant university model. And the land was given as an asset to universities to build excellence. And once they did that, but they also said that in return for that, the universities must work on such branches of learning as are related to agriculture and the mechanic arts. In those days, it was agriculture and the mechanic arts. So the university must, now that you have taken all the land which belong to people, now you need to work towards empowering them, towards serving them, right? So then the university started to connect with the people. And that is a great thing that US did by connecting universities to the society nearby through the land that they acquired from the different people and gave it to the university. And so that societal connect is what turned US universities into what they are today, right? Because once they started focusing on the problems of the society, then they started developing technologies, they started, build industries, they started developing whatever is required to empower the people, whose land they were occupying, right? So that's essentially what has made the US universities what it is. So that society connect is what transformed the US universities into what they are today as the centers of excellence. So whereas most of the research right now, right, is solutions looking for a problem. All of us develop solutions and then you try to see where they can apply that. But what we need to be doing is the solutions, looking for a problem to solution to a problem. I think that is the transition that we need to make now. But somebody has to give us problems, right? If we want to work on problems, somebody has to define the problems for us. But who is defining the problems for us? I think very often it doesn't happen in India. So as a scientist, I define a problem for myself, and I will spend my lifetime working on the problem, and nobody would even question me what I've done yet. Right? So in the absence of any national level, grand challenge kind of an initiative, any of such a thing, everybody is defining their own problem and then solving it. That is what is the problem right now. But where will this change, right? So this has to change somewhere. That is where I have also been writing about the grand challenges approach. In the same country, if you look at ISRO, right? ISRO has done very well, right? Despite whatever you may claim, but ISRO at the end of the day is able to fly satellites and one of the top 3 or 4 countries which is able to do that. Even DRDO has done very well, right? What is the difference? DAE has also done very well, right? What is the difference there? The difference is the mission mode approach. At the end of the day, you may have any number of labs in ISRO, but everybody has to contribute towards flying a satellite. If your technology doesn't go into a satellite, you have done nothing. Right? Their entire assessment process, their entire laboratory culture is towards flying that satellite with a clear missions, right? This year we will do this year we will do that. The entire system comes together to actually achieve that particular target, in these organizations. And wherever a mission is set, India has developed, India has delivered, labs have delivered. That's exactly the case right now. And where that mission is not set, right, then we go all over. Right? The same country, if you look at during COVID time, we did very well. In the COVID time, India was able to develop vaccines, and the technologies developed in many of our universities, including the labs here, right, have actually benefited the people outside. That why did it happen during COVID? Because everybody was only working on COVID. There was a mission. The problem was very clear. You have to do something, and if you said, I will solve a problem after 2 years, then there is no 2 years. Nobody is interested. You had a time pressure and you had a clear-cut problem statement, right? And you knew what you need to do. Because you knew, because you were connected with the people around, and you knew exactly what was happening. So I think labs contributed and did, significant things during the COVID time. And once the COVID got over, then we went back to, whatever we were working earlier. So I think, setting those missions, setting clear directions is what is lacking in the country. That's the reason why we are not able to, perform to the best of our abilities. And there is something to learn from the ISRO model, when it comes to this. So this is what it is. Any institution, these are the three things: education, knowledge generation, and innovation. Developing, generating the value for that knowledge, that also needs to happen in this. But we have also done a lot of startups, right? One of the reasons why we are ranked 38th today for innovation is because of these startups too. India is ranked third in the world today, for startups. Right? We have like 118 unicorns in the country, multiple decacons. BITS Pilani, 10% of these unicorns have come out of BITS Pilani, and about 40 unicorns came out of IIT Delhi, right? So I think this institution, their alumni have done very well when it comes to creating these unicorns. But in all these unicorns, what is common, right? There are, I did a study, how many of these unicorns have a patent, right? An intellectual property based on which they did something. Less than 5% of them. Right? There are about 4 unicorns today, right, which have a patent behind them or an intellectual property behind them. The rest are all what I call the business model innovations, right? So somebody is, showed the way how you can bring all the restaurants together, build an app, right, and make a unicorn, right? Zomato did that. Swiggy did that, right? And then so many companies are doing that. What they did for restaurants, somebody did for taxis. And what they did for taxis, somebody did for trucks. And the trucks to Dobis to, what have you. So people have been doing this aggregate model, right? The business model innovation. And we have done, lot of such unicorns today. And but the real, IP-based kind of technologies, IP-based kind of unicorns, that hasn't happened still. So, but that is where academic institutions have a role to play. I mean, that a BTech student will never be able to do that. A BTech student would not even know, anything about any of these. If you ask a BTech student to do, some startup based on quantum technology or nanotechnology or biotechnology, will have no idea how to even do that, right? But the BTech students can do this business model kind of innovations, which is, which is good. And in fact, IIT Delhi, is number one in the country today when it comes to unicorns. IIT Delhi alumni have actually produced more unicorns than any other institute in the country, over 40 of them indeed. And I was curious, when I was the director there, I was curious what is that the institute is doing, to produce so many unicorns. And if we understand the process, then you can strengthen those processes to, further do better on that count. So we looked at all the unicorns, how they came about, and we did those studies, right? And finally, we figured out that there is nothing IIT Delhi is doing differently compared to IIT Bombay. I come from IIT Bombay, so nothing that IIT Delhi is doing differently compared to IIT Bombay. All these unicorns are basically by Bansals, Agarwals, Mittals, the business communities. And the IIT Delhi traditionally attracted students from the business communities, right? And so that's the reason why they had they all had in their DNA the businesses, right? And then they came to IIT Delhi, got a degree, they went back to doing business, albeit a little bit differently from what their fathers were doing. I think that was the only difference between why IIT Delhi did so many unicorns and IIT Bombay did not do that. So now how do you change that? I mean, you can admit more Bansals and Mittals. Other than that, you really cannot do anything more than that. But then we introduce courses to teach business, the business models and all of that. In BITS Pilani, there is a very nice course which is a new what is it called? So it's actually new venture creation. There is a course on new venture creation, how to start a company. There's a full-fledged 40-hour lecture course on that. Lot of students take that course. 60% of students who take that course actually become entrepreneurs. 60%, very high target right now. So I think that is what I think we can teach some of these business practices. Whereas for many people from that community, it's all taught over your lunch and dinner. But here you have to go to IIMs and then learn it as by paying for the MBAs and all of that. In fact, there was apparently one meeting where Dhirubhai Ambani was there. It's a real story. Somebody narrated to me, and that meeting had a lot of people. And somebody commented that everybody here is an MBA except Dhirubhai Ambani. But look at he has created more wealth than all of us together, kind of a thing. And somebody said, but he also has an MBA and he is a Marwadi Business Association, kind of a thing. So he belongs to that MBA batch. So I think that is what has helped him to create those sort of businesses. So that is exactly what has happened in India. But this is also I moved to BITS Pilani about 3 years ago, right? And BITS Pilani falls under this region called Shekhawati. And Shekhawati basically is, of course, Pilani, Junjunu, Mandava, and Nawalgarh. This is a semi-arid region in Rajasthan, basically desert, right? But that Shekhawati region has produced so many businessmen. From that region came Birlas, of course, Bajaj, Mittals, Piramals, Dalmia, Singhania, Kajaria, everybody you name has actually come there. Other than Ambani and Adani who came from Gujarat, all other business people just came from that one single region, Shekhawati. Right? Now the question, I was actually curious, why is it that one single region has produced so many great businessmen of the country, right? And the reason for that is, the origins lie in the Silk Road. We haven't, unfortunately, our business schools also don't study some of these kind of things. I mean, if somebody studies why Shekhawati region produced so many businessmen, right, as a case study, would have been such a great thing for the country. But our business schools only study Harvard business models and all of that, but don't look at Shekhawatis and some of these kind of things. So, but basically they were all of these. The Shekhawati king was very generous at that time. So what he said was he lowered the taxes for business people to come and set up their businesses. He also provided them safety because they were all trading on the Silk Road. Silk Road was passing through that region. So they were all trading on the Silk Road, right? Collecting taxes, selling goods, collecting goods. So they were all traders basically. And because Shekhawati king, provided more safety, security for them and lowered the taxes, all of them basically set up their businesses or their operations in the Shekhawati region. There lies the origin why Shekhawati region produced all of them. And then these people were basically traders. And after that, they moved to Calcutta during the Britishers' time. And then they moved to Bombay. And then they established businesses, scaled up. But they're all, very conservative capital, very bold ambitions. That's what they say, where Bahelgadi nahi pahunch sakta hai, Marwadi pahunchne ka karke. So that is what there are some nice saying in Rajasthan which they talk about, these communities and very strong family governance, right? At the end of the day, only from their family can become the chairman. Very close-knit kind of families, the trust networks they were able to establish, and they created wealth aligned with nation building, right? Of course, they have contributed to the prosperity of the nation in so many ways, but they are all basically traders, right? They are not known to take science out of a laboratory, right, and then convert that into a product and then sell it. They did not, do anything like that. So once they identified a particular business, you would invest 5,000 crores into that, and within 3-4 years, it will become 10,000 crores, 20,000 crores, and then you are in the business. So most of these, the BITS Pilani falls in that region. So no wonder. The DNA, is passed on to the students who came to BITS Pilani. So it does very well in terms of startups. So like I said, 10% of India's unicorns came out of that desert kind of a region. So therefore, from wealth scaling to science translation has not happened in the country. What we have built is wealth generating more wealth. These people have huge capital, right? They have cash inflows and they can invest that money and then they can build businesses. The services scaling with market demand, operational excellence and global delivery. Basically, they are all balance sheet driven growth, right? They are not looking at, you invest today and 5 years from now I will make money. You can never sell it to anybody. If I are investing in this quarter, right, within 2 years you need to, start making revenues kind of a thing. But we rarely originate any deep science platforms. What we need to do is, we need to create patient capital for frontier science, co-creation with universities, corporate labs anchored in fundamentals, ownership of global IP. I think this is what we need to move to. Now, the next generation of businesses need to be more science-based, right? Science to wealth translation, not wealth to more wealth. That Indians have figured out very well. But what we need to do is science to the wealth kind of translation. And so that is where we have to find new models. It is not in our DNA, unfortunately, but but we have to develop that thing, and we have to do something about it. India has the talent, capital, and markets. The missing link is science to wealth translation models, and this is where CSIR can play a major role. Right? I have been writing about it. I have been talking about it. For example, today there's a lot of research happening in academic institutions, right? Much of that research comes up to a proof of concept, right? You write a paper because you have done something new, you file a patent, right? And then you move on. Once you reach TRL 3, proof of concept, the student would have graduated by that time. Now you start with a new student, and there is nothing like a continuing from one student to other student, right? So therefore you start with a new problem, new statements, and all of that, right? And imagine CSIR sitting in the middle of academia and industry, right? CSIR connected with all this network of universities, right? And then keenly follows what is happening in these universities, who is doing what, whose technology has merit, who has reached something new in terms of technology, readiness level, tree kind of a thing. And then you go and work with that faculty member, right? You build teams around that faculty member, and over a period of time, you generate expertise to take the TRL 3 level technology to TRL 7, right? Once you reach TRL 7, industry will be interested. You can even start a company, and you can do many more things with that. The major valley of death right now is TRL 3 to TRL 5, or TRL 5 to TRL 7. There are two valleys of death. But I think that is where I would personally like to have CSIR work between academia and industry, right? And then take this all the great work happening in academia, which reaches a certain level, and translate it to a level where industry is willing to take that, or some company will get formed around that, using all the networks, all the the kind of incentives that exist today. I think that is where I would have, CSIR has a role to play when it comes to the science translation in the country. And without that, we don't have any institutional pathways. Today, there is no institutional pathways for any faculty member to take anything to the market. Because who will do that? If I have to do that, I have to learn so many things, right? I don't have any idea how to do all of that. And many faculty don't even have any idea how to do all of that. So it's a struggle not many are willing to go through. As a result, a lot of good research never finds any, any application, because there are no institutional pathways, which can actually bridge these kind of gaps. And that I think we need to create institutions. I have been, in fact, my last proposal to PSA office is to create such institutions. You can call them India Labs, right? Or you can call them whatever name you want, or convert some CSIR labs into those labs, which create the translational pathways, for science to become those technologies kind of a thing. So I hope something will happen. And then there is a very nice, smile curve, right? And this is in the business kind of community. This is known as the smile curve, where you are looking at, when you are developing a product, right? Where does the maximum value addition happen? The maximum value addition, in a production chain, when you are developing a product, you start with the concept and R&D, you design a product, and then you finally sell. In between, there are branding, design, manufacturing, distribution, marketing. All of these become part of the production chain, right? And where does the company make maximum value add? The maximum value add happens at the two extreme ends. The concept and R&D, those who have thought of a new product idea, right? And then the sales and after sales, right? Look at Apple. Apple has a market valuation of what? $4 trillion or $5 trillion. Apple doesn't do any manufacturing. All their manufacturing is done by Foxconn in Taiwan. And what is the Foxconn's market valuation? Foxconn market valuation is $70 billion or $60 billion, right? The people who make all the Apple phones are valued at 70 billion. The people who design the iPhone are valued at $4 trillion, right? That is the difference between thinking of new products and manufacturing something. So what India needs, therefore, are the more product ideas, right? We need to come up with new product ideas, and that is when we will be able to build, those kind of wealth, those kind of companies. And unless we think of those new product ideas, I think India will always be, lagging behind, and it's also ran kind of a thing. But we will never become the Viksit Bharat or anything like that. I think for the Viksit Bharat to happen, we need to create more product ideas. We need to create that generation of people who are actually, thinking of new products, like what has happened. So of late, I have been talking of this 7P framework, right? So how does research happen in any place, right? You start with a problem, right? The problem statements can come from industry or anywhere, right? And then out of those problems, you write a project, right? And out of the project, you file patents, right? Wherever you think something needs to be protected, and out of that work, you write papers too, right? So the problem to project to patent to papers, and most of the research, 99% of our research basically stops here. Once I file a patent, once I write a paper, it's done, right? Job is done. It goes into some reports, and then you can go to the next problem. But the real translation work begins after that. Then you build a prototype. Then you, out of that prototype, you do all the field tests and everything that is required. You build a product, and that product sold in the market will create profits, and those profits will go back to solving more problems. Now, but since all of our research, a large fraction of it stops at just the patents and papers here, right? Since not much happens beyond papers and patents, there is no way to, whatever money that is being spent, there is no way to recover that, right? How does that money come back to any system? So you file a patent, you published a paper, right? Neither anybody is reading those papers nor anyone licensing that patent. What has happened? So basically, it's a sink right now for all the research money. The governments have a problem with that. The reason why the governments are not increasing the budgets is, if you are all just publishing papers, right, one paper to other papers, then why should we fund more money, right? They are not seeing the value that is getting accrued out of all the money that is being spent on research. But I think, I also feel where CSIR can pitch itself is beyond this stage, right? I mean, sitting here, right, and then you're all scientists, you are all like IIT professors, so you can understand those papers, you can understand what is there in the patent, because professors claim a lot of things which are actually not true. So then, but you can make out what is good, what is not good, and then take it forward and convert some of that into wealth. I think this needs to happen. I mean, unless we create those institutional pathways, this country will remain what it is, and I think that is what it is. I think there is also this integrated innovation framework we need to create. One of the problems right now with our institutions is they are all working in a silo, right? And particularly, at least in CSIR, you talk to strategic agencies. Many of our projects originate in somebody coming and asking you to develop something. But in IIT, there is nothing like that happens, right? I mean, so you go to, when a PhD student joins, many of you have done PhDs from IIT. How do you find a PhD problem? You go to library, right? You do literature survey, you read 100 papers, and you say that this is done, this is not done. Then you write another paper, do another PhD, right? So most of the research happens in the library. Right? It comes from library, it goes back to library, right? Nobody else sees what happens between other than these two. And then, but education is separate, innovation is separate, and all these people, none of them is majorly collaborating with for research here, and that is a problem where which currently exists. What needs to happen? I think this is the kind of an ecosystem that we need to create: research, education, innovation, all coupled together, right? And the research, the problems are coming from problems, and even funding coming from industry, society, line ministries, strategic agencies, library, all of them collaborating with the researchers. That is what should happen. And otherwise, but today the line ministry, which line ministry works with us? Other than the Ministry of Science and Technology, no line ministry actually comes to any of these institutions and gives their problem statement, right? Ministry of Agriculture, they have so many problems to deal with, but they wouldn't come to an institute and say, here is the money and I want this problem to be solved, right? That doesn't happen. And unfortunately, most of these ministries have started their own institutions, right? And they don't even know what happens in those institutions. But our top institutions in the country today for research, they don't even get to work with other line ministry than your parent ministry. That is a problem. And in fact, government tried to solve it through a program called Imprint, right? But then, all of that really did not go anywhere. So I think, the another thing that we need to do when it comes to the research is, in IIT Delhi, we tried something like Idea Factory. So when I joined IIT Delhi, it was the same problem. IIT Delhi was not collaborating with anyone, right? The institute, nobody would even collaborate within the institute, right? And even in the electrical department, a power faculty member would not talk to microelectronics faculty member because your power levels are very different, and so you cannot talk to each other kind of thing. So that was the situation. So we started a very simple program. We called we said unlike minds kind of an approach. This is actually something which we put into the strategy document of IIT Delhi. So we said, what are these unlike minds? Unlike minds are, when does innovation happen? When do new ideas happen? When unlike minds come together, when people who don't think like you, people who don't behave like you, right, who come from different cultures, start talking to each other, that is when you get new ideas. If the same electrical engineer goes every day for tea with the same people in the group, right, nothing new is going to happen, right? You only discuss and blame the institute and director and everybody. Other than that, nothing really can happen out of those discussions. But imagine people from different cultural backgrounds coming together, people from different disciplinary backgrounds coming together, people with different attitudes, like the industry people talking to academia. So unlike minds is people who are very diverse in so many ways coming and interacting with each other. So if institutions can create platforms for such interactions to happen, I can tell you a lot of great things can happen in our institution. So we started so many programs. We started joint degree program. We started international PhD fellowship program, international students, international faculty. So a lot of international campus. In fact, during my time, I wrote a letter to ministry saying allow us to open a campus in, that time it was a different country in UAE, not Abu Dhabi, where IIT Delhi has created a campus. So I wrote that first letter to ministry saying, allow IIT Delhi to start a campus in this country because that country is willing to fund, the entire cost of establishing an IIT there. Then they referred that letter to law ministry, and then law ministry sat on that. After 3 years, I think they decided Abu Dhabi, and then all of that happened. So I was in the Abu Dhabi campus, and the campus is coming up very well, right? So the different disciplinary training, we started a program called, CSIR is what we started in School for Innovation, Interdisciplinary Research. Under the CSIR, we have a PhD program, right? You can check the CSIR webpage. Unless you have 2 supervisors from 2 different departments, you cannot admit a student into the CSIR. For a Chinese CSIR student, the 2 faculty members need to come together, write a project proposal for PhD, right? Display it on the web page, and then students apply to that project, right? And there are now over 150 PhD students inside. Each student has 2 supervisors from 2 different departments and working on interdisciplinary kind of problems. And we created a program called FIRP, that is Faculty Innovation and Research-Driven research-driven program. So under the FIRP, Faculty Interdisciplinary Research Program, under that we gave faculty 5 lakh rupees each to collaborate with each other outside the department. If a biology faculty member works with mechanical faculty member, each of them receive 5 lakh rupees for 2 years. So 20 lakhs is what institute will spend on that project, with the condition that after 2 years, you have to go out and get external funding, right? Because you work for 2 years using this 20 lakhs, and the outcome is how much of external funding have you generated. We invested about 7 crores in the FIRP projects in bringing faculty together and funding them. After about 3.5 years, when we reviewed, institute had generated 170 crores of external funding. Because once they were able to collaborate with each other, they were able to think of new ideas and then go and write proposals which are different from what they were otherwise doing. So I think we need to incentivize people to collaborate with each other. That is one thing which is missing in our system. Everybody gives a lot of speeches on multidisciplinary research, but then once you write a multidisciplinary project, you don't even know, who will fund it. If you go to DST, they will send you to DBT. If you go to DBT, they will send you to, some other ministry kind of thing. I think some of these, we need to nationalize that. I have written about it to both ANRF and DST, saying, let's start these FIRT programs at the national level. Unless people from diverse disciplines come together and write a coherent proposal, right, you cannot be eligible for that scheme, right? I think those are things that we need to do. And then we did a lot of innovation, like entrepreneurship opportunities. And finally, IIT Delhi in 6 years, right, we could see a major growth there. Right? Like lot of, for example, we were collaborating with 50 plus industries before, and then it was 275 plus industries afterwards. All that we did was we created a corporate relations office. We started to aggressively approach industries, and that showed dividends there. And similarly, we filed more patents in that 5 years than the previous 55 years of IIT Delhi. 4x increase in funding. We were doing like 100 crores per year. It became 400 crores because people were talking to each other and writing exciting proposals, and that is exactly what happened because of that scheme. I think these are the things that we need to do. And during the COVID time, a lot of great things happened. RT-PCR kit to the local low cost antigen kit and all of that. I think that is what ideally we need to be doing. I think we need to bridge this gap between the science and translational kind product kind of research, and that is when great things will happen. And this patent thing, I also I should be closing now, right? So the patent thing, if you look at, India is filing lots of patents, right? But how do you make money out of patents? It's actually a myth that you earn money out of patents. If you look at, I have this study, you can also go and check that. In 2023, Stanford, sitting in the middle of Silicon Valley, right, files over 500 patents. How much money do you think Stanford earned out of their patent licensing? Stanford in the Silicon Valley, right, with the kind of thing that they have done. Just 0.66% of their entire revenues came from IP licensing. Less than 1% of money of their entire budget is what is earned through licensing. MIT, again 0.86%. So expecting that you file a patent, somebody will take that IP and give you $1 million or $100 million is not going to happen every year. Once in a blue moon it might happen, but you actually spend more money in filing and maintaining the patents than actually getting any money out of them. Right? That is, today the only people who are getting richer because of patenting in India are the lawyers. Law has become a big profession right now, the patent attorneys. Other than that, nobody is earning any money out of the patents. But why do you need to file patents? Right? The same Stanford, right? If you actually look at it, the real value is startups based on patents that drive the economy with valuations running into thousands of crores in India and hundreds of billions. In fact, Stanford has created $3 trillion through their startups. The companies which have come out of Stanford developed technology, Stanford IP, now are valued at $3 trillion US, right? That is where the real value lies of patenting. And if we don't enable those pathways of the patents becoming startups and then people getting benefited from that, I think all the money spent on patents is not going to yield any revenues for any university. And so these are some of the things we need to do, and we need to create those pathways. And I think academia industry collaborations are real key drivers. Unless that happens, it will really not make any much of an impact on all of our research investments. And I personally feel CSIR if it can find that role of being the bridge between academia and industry, right? I would think a lot of great things can happen for the country. I mean, I have so many more things, but I think I'll stop here. So while ethics, integrity, all of them are there, but I think like I said, the conscious innovation, right? What we need to be doing for the country is nation first, right? All these politicians, all these leaders will come today and go tomorrow. I think we are never working for anybody. We are working for the country. I think for me, it really doesn't matter who is doing in what position, because if all good people will go, all the bad people also will go. And so therefore, it doesn't really matter. I think we should always look at it that we are working for the nation, and nation first. And when you put nation first, people are very small people, small fries and all of that. So I think if you are working for the nation, what does the country need? I think these are the things that the country needs right now. And while, of course, we should be investing more and more into all of these, but I think at some point we need to create those institutional pathways. and we need institutions to be worrying about some of these kind of aspects, and so that build those product kind of companies going forward. Like today, which country has produced maximum $1 trillion companies? It's US. US has $7 trillion companies. No company from Europe has touched $1 trillion. Not a single European company is $1 trillion. The only $1 trillion company outside of US is in Saudi Arabia, the oil company, the Aramco, right? Other than the Saudi Arabian oil company, which is of course oil, so you can't do anything about it. But other than that, innovation-based kind of companies reaching $1 trillion valuation, only US is able to create that. And that is again because of the academia industry working closely together, and the science to wealth translation, which they have perfected. Right? I mean, why did ChatGPT happen there? Basically because that they know that if there is a science, they have figured out how to make money out of that. Now OpenAI is right now what valued at $300 billion or $400 billion in just the past 2 years. Right? So that will become $1 trillion company pretty soon. So I think that is the kind of a pathway we need to create, to ever become a developed kind of a country. That product companies bridging the science to the end user requirements. I think this, I hope things will change, and CSIR, I believe, has a major role to play in making this transition possible. I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Yes, I have. You have beautifully presented the landscape of present in science and technology in India. And also you mentioned that we have to bridge the gap between academia and industry. And also mentioned that Stanford alone contributed $30 trillion economy. What I found in USA, since we are following USA model, in
USA before Trump. So I think now let's be clear. So now what Trump will do is he's copying India in everything, but I think US before Trump.
So there I found all the faculty who are associated with science or technology, most of them heads any startup, where India majorly fails in that domain.
The head what?
Startup.
Yeah. Now in IITs, all of us have.
Now he's doing, but
CSIR needs to enable it. I've been saying CSIR scientists should be allowed to start companies. You have done that. Your NCL has an incubator, right? But then that cannot be done in CSIR. I never understood why you were not able to make a uniform policy encouraging more startups out of CSIR.
No, yes, that's true. But again, the unicorn you talk about, you are saying only 5% having IP related things. So my question is, in 1901, Ishida, you may be aware that father of Indian chemistry, we came up with the startup of Bengal chemistry. But then after that, why Indian academicians cannot pick up that motivation? That's my.
I think these are like if CSIR was allowed to do that, right? I am sure there would have been some successful startups out of CSIR. I think we are becoming very constrained. We are constraining the life of a scientist. What, like I said, what you could do 10 years ago in CSIR, you cannot do it today, right? Now imagine 50 years ago what kind of things our scientists were able to do. They did not have enough money, but they had all the freedom in the world to do what they wanted. Right? That's how, even from a place like Bengal, they could create some of that innovation, right? I think too many rules are restricting us right now. I mean, in the name of transparency, in the name of accountability, right? Every ministry is run by the financial advisors, not by the DGs or anybody. I mean, so it's basically the FA which runs the university right now. That's the problem. And for them, it's all balance sheet, right? I think they're all looking at how much money is spent, how much money is earned, and it's all total nonsense. I mean, we have gotten into, unfortunately, into that mode. But my next part of presentation was about what did I do. I have 2 startups. I don't know how many of you know, but my one startup. I will not get into any of this, but my one startup, NanoSniff, is now doing very well. Every second airport in the country today has nano sniffers, right? In fact, we we made 50 crore worth business last year, right? This was 232 60 airports now have nano sniffers, and so we were able to capture this entire market. All airports were using Smith systems, right? Now we are able to capture that. This is a world's first micro sensor based explosive detector. World's first. We have the US, European, all the patents now, and this is now selling everywhere. And nobody can beat us on that. My second company, this was because again, I realized that it's a problem, explosive detection. I saw that everybody is using mass spectroscopy to detect explosives and all that. And then we worked on at IIT Bombay, and then subsequently NanoSnip developed all of this to basically make the entire technology on a micro sensor. It's a micro heater based system. You can find it on the web page. Nano Sniffer, if you type, you get all information about it. My second company is Soil Sense. In fact, last week they participated in the Shark Tank, the CEO and others. So Soil Sense is again doing very well. Soil Sense now has the NPK sensors and all of that. And the last slide they showed was they are managing 40,000 hectares right now, 25,000 farmers, 40% reduction in chemical inputs and all that. So they have the technology and they are again doing very well. So they have their manufacturing in Pune. So this is what at IIT Bombay, I looked at, put the problem first. And it took me 10 years. The nano sniff from the concept to getting to the airports, and now every second airport using it took me full 10 years, right? And the company also played a major role, the nano sniff, which we incubated. But the journey is often 10 years or longer. It is not going to happen overnight. And the soil sense is a full 8 years of effort. 2018, we incubated the company. So now they have been able to do all of that. So these technologies are complex. If something is easy, then somebody would have done it already. So I think that patient capital is important, and India can do that. There are so many scientists in this room and elsewhere who can actually do that. All that is needed is a little bit of empowerment for them, and a lot of things. So I just wanted to complete the story.
Good morning, sir. First of all, I would like to express that really I'm back here again, and it has really been advice hearing you. So, I want to ask that, like you rightly pointed out, that there's a dearth between tier 3 to 5 and then 5 to 7. And also, as you, even being a academician, you have actually understood the soul of CSIR being there for societal and industrial research. So, how would you suggest that it has been said that scientists should drive that value bound, but somehow there's too much glorification attached to the publication metrics and not that much weightage given to the translation approach or technology thing. Like you rightly mentioned, it takes the technology 8 to 10 years. So, being at that pinnacle, how would you motivate us as scientists to battle the balance between these two things?
I also currently serve on the advisory board of CSIR, which is chaired by Professor Junjunwala, where your DG is a member. And a lot of these things get discussed there. I think the assessment process is skewing all the outputs right now. Because if you are assessed based on publications, you have no choice but to write papers. And writing papers, developing technology don't go hand in hand, right? And a product, usually requires very simple and elegant technologies, which is easy to manufacture. Something very simple and elegant will never get published. The reviewers, once they understand what you have done, they say, there is nothing great in this kind of thing. So therefore, the product and the kind of oriented research, publication oriented research go, opposite to each other, because publication oriented research needs more complexity, right, to justify the publication in a top journal. Product thing, something very complex to make will never make it to the market, right? So therefore, these two things never go hand in hand. But that is where the assessment metrics need to be tweaked. If CSIR is insisting on publications, you will publish papers. If they are insisting on papers, you will also file patents. I mean, what does it take to file a patent which doesn't, the same skill set you have for publishing a paper, you can also file a patent. There's nothing very different between publication and patent. Only a lawyer is involved in between. Right? So but that is what is giving the entire, system in the country. It's not just CSIR, right? The country, NIRF. Now everybody wants to be ranked. I mean, these are ranked by Government of India. Now they are deciding even the grants based on where you are placed in the NIRF ranking, right? Now, if you make government is ranking institutions, and if you start disbursing, the funds based on that ranking, then you have to follow what the rankings is asking you to do. They are looking at how many patents have you filed. Of course, people are filing 5,000 patents and say that there are 0.2% is the acceptance rate for these patents, 0.2%. But by the time you figure it out, you would have got a good rank in the NIRF and you get away with it, right? That is a problem right now. I mean, who is doing that, right? Ministry, somebody is sitting there, and they would have consulted one or two people here and then doing that. I think the problem is with the assessment processes, whether it is NIRF or CSIR, what happens centrally. I have been raising this. NIRF, if you see, I have written articles, and NIRF now has modified this year. They have promised that it will be even better. But I have publicly taken a stand against that. But government doesn't like me saying so openly that this is wrong, that is wrong, and all of
But
that.
I would like to just add that your op-eds are like first go to non-fiction reads, and they are literally very intriguing and always on point.
Thank you so much.
And please
But
keep writing.
I will take it up again in the CSR advisory board meeting. I think you need to, ICMR has come up with something very interesting. Have you seen the ICMR assessment process? They are now recognizing technologies. They have come up with, anybody here is aware of it? ICMR now has published an assessment metric, which is not just a patent. They give points, but those points depend on the TRL level technology, how much you have improved. All of that they have considered now to give those kind of metrics, to design those metrics. And I think maybe something like that. I will study the ICMR thing more carefully and see if CSIR can also do something like that. So, sure.
Actually, somebody said that our per capita GDP is around 3,000 USD. In this per capita GDP, getting this nation's capital is very difficult. And in our country, we have very few very rich people and most of them poor people. So, in principle, we are around 3,000 USD. So it is difficult to get that patient's capital as compared to US or somewhere. What is your view about that?
That's just the money you can count. That's a white money, right? The black money economy in India is equivalent to that. So I think you also need to keep in mind how much of black money people are holding right now. So the per capita, but India, 1% of Indians hold now some 25% of the country's wealth, right? And all these people also can create those kind of avenues, right? But that's the reason I mentioned that wealth to the Marwadi Business Association. So these are the challenges. But we have to learn it somewhere, right? I mean, government now, when I started my company in 2011, 2018, public money going to a private entity was a complete no. BIRAC was the only scheme in the entire government setup which could fund startups. BIRAC was the only thing. I tried very hard to create similar one in DST for the nano mission. For the nano mission, for 2 years we worked hard. I said the same Ministry of Science and Technology, if DPT is able to fund startups, why can't DST do that, right? But nobody had an answer. Finally, the FAA shot it down, and CNR Rao was the chairman of nano mission. All of us were involved. Nothing happened. We couldn't create that process. Only in 2024-25, now they are talking openly about funding startups from DST. DST has given quantum companies like 25 crores, 20 crores kind of a money. Many startups in quantum have received 15 to 25 crores now as grant from government to DST, which is a good sign, right? And I think now DST is saying, they are openly funding startups and all the technology innovation hubs they created. That has happened only for the past 3 years, right? Until that time, government money going to a startup was a complete no. And I think, hopefully this will, government money is always good because for a deep tech startup, right, it will take you 10 years. And if you go to VCs and angel investors, they will take your entire company because in initial stages, you will not have anything other than a great idea and a very, basic prototype, right? At that time, getting private investment is bad actually because then your equity will get diluted so much. But government grants, if they are available, then you reach TRL 7, TRL 8, then you can raise money from, you will be valued much higher by then. And I think the patient capital problem probably we have solved to some extent. not through the VCs and other business communities, but government has woken up to that fact, and now things are possible.
Total IIT budget is therefore 11,700 crores. Total budget about the CSIR is 6,700 crores. And you are doing this patents and publications market to CSIR. So what I suggest is that at this juncture, you are on the various different committees. You should convey to the society, industry people that CSR should be effectively used in conversion of that.
I totally agree. I agree with you. CSIR now is more oriented towards academia than industry, right? Now, whenever I go for DST thing, there are CSIR projects also, right? Asking for DST funding and all the funding. So I think CSIR is now competing more with universities than collaborating with them. And DRDO has done it very well. If you look at the last 5 years, DRDO is now mandated that some percentage of their money, some 30 to 40% must be spent on academia. And they have created the centers of excellence in each IIT. IIT Delhi received 400 crores from DRDO. Now a lot of technologies have come out of that process. So DRDO now has, is utilizing academic talent much more effectively through their joint technology centers and then through the more grants. Right? Every DRDO director can give grants to academic institutions. So now that part, DRDO is doing very well. I'm very happy about what they have been able to do in the last just 3-4 years. But CSIR is still inward looking. So
CSR expenditure as per the government of India, Company Act 2013, 2% expenditure must be done by the listed and unlisted companies for the CSR. So, effective use of this CSR money for the scientific area, and definitely.
Totally agree. In fact, the last thing I was talking about is mandating industries to spend a percentage of their revenues, not just CSR. CSR is a social service. I mean, research is not social service, right? So the mandating percentage of revenues from industries to be spent on academic institutions, right? So I think unless government makes it a policy, right, it won't happen. I mean, what did I, in fact, just 4 days ago, I shared on my LinkedIn. What is the point there? The point was, can we mandate industries to specify how much money have they spent on R&D? A mandate. I mean, government mandates all industries to declare that I have spent this much of money on R&D, right? The moment you do that, right, then there will be pressure on them to spend on R&D. Right now, their travel budgets are more than the R&D budgets, right? But I think once they start declaring how much money they have spent as part of a government mandated process, a lot of things can happen. So I think these things through policy we can correct them, but unfortunately, taking time.
I think I just wanted to submit a smart thing just because you said 6,000 crores. Just want to inform also that out of that 6,000 crores, CSR will not spend more than 50 or 60% and try to give it back. So we also need to be thinking how much of it we can really utilize, and at the end of the year be able to continue.
Spending government money is more difficult than getting government money right now.
So therefore, that factor needs to be factored in order to make sure we are on the correct platform.
When DST has returned huge amounts of money, I am told. The rules have become so difficult now to spend. You get the money in February and it will be taken away on March 31st.
But the curtailments happen because of inability to spend in the last exactly.
Sir, Dr. Shishir Sarkar. Sir, you know CSIR now well, and also you have been in IIT for long. So I want to just have your suggestion how to compete or be at par with IIT without having a constant good talent pool. Good talent pool, like student, how to attract that to because I know you will also agree that to do research you need young fresh minds. How to attract that in this system? What do you suggest?
But I think you should not even compete. You should collaborate.
Okay.
So, I would like to see, more collaborations between CSIR and IIT. So because IITs have certain strengths, right? And no, CSIR is becoming like another IIT. Why? Why do you want to become another IIT? So you can have your own distinct character. I would like to see CSIR, develop its own distinct character. Like, I think you must be between the TRL 3 to TRL 5, TRL 7 category. And that is where, for example, lot of research is happening there, right? You don't have to replicate that research, publish the same papers, right? Let them do that research, but then you work with them, you understand what they are doing. Now right now you may not be able to do that because you're also coming from the same system. You don't know how to make prototypes. You also don't know how to get that certification, manufacturing, and all of that. But once you do it once, twice, thrice, you develop that expertise. My first company took for 10 years to get a product out. In second company, I could do it in 5 years. Now I will start my third company, hopefully in next 2 years. I will be able to do it in 3 years, right? Because there is a lot of learning that happens today, and that institutional memory, right, will see that CSIR through. Right now, because you have not been doing that, anything like that, you don't know also, you're like IIT, so you also don't know how to do that. But once you develop that institutional capability for translation, over a period of time, you will be such a valuable resource for the country. The whole academia will come and talk to you because only you will be the people who can help them to get anything out of the market.
So, but again, all of us are from academic background and our upbringing and knowledge is like up to level 4, 5. But for translation and research, how to develop us more? So,
that is where we need to invest. That's where we can have some industry to collaborate. Unfortunately, Indian industry has also not done that. They are also not, developed anything from TRL 3 to 7 and made money out of it. So they're also getting something from outside and then, manufacturing and selling it. So, but somewhere we need to develop it. In academia, I also did not know anything. But then there are people you can go to, right? You can, get that expertise. We need to learn it. So now I know how to build a prototype. I know what it takes to start a company. Now I understand what equity is. I understand what sweat equity is. First company we made lots of mistakes, but second company we corrected them. My third company, I know what I will do. So I think there is a learning by doing. I think that's a very valuable learning actually.
yeah,
learning by doing.
it involves lots of certification, documentation, and all of these are not in our.
You are all bright people, I think.
Yeah.
What you have that IQ, you can actually absorb what it takes. And first time is always difficult, but labs will slowly develop that expertise once you start doing.
So anything institutional pathway wise you suggest in this?
I think I have been proposing creating new institutions because in this country, whenever you want to solve a problem, because existing problem cannot be solved, you cannot do anything to CSIR. Therefore, start another institute. That's how we often operate, right? So I have been writing about, in fact, my last proposal to PSA office is to create such labs, India labs kind of thing, India translational labs, ideal sort of labs dedicated to different domains, and then where they will hire the right kind of people, and then they will also have funding. I mean, if you say that I can provide you expertise, but you get the money, where will a faculty member go and get the money? So if you like that idea, if you think it has a market potential, commercialization, all of that, then you not only invest, you provide all the expertise needed to take it forward. The faculty member will hold some equity and will keep quiet, will transfer everything to you, and then you will build a team around that and then take things forward. So that is the kind of a model that will work. So that requires that expertise to be built and facilities to be built. The certification, the manufacturing, prototyping, right, reliability, all of that requires a lot of that expertise, and that expertise is there in pockets in the country, and it can be leveraged. We can even collaborate with Fraunhofer kind of institution. Many of them want to collaborate with India. I think we can also leverage some of those international partnerships too.
Hello, good morning, sir. Thank you for your insightful presentation. My name is Jagpreet, sir. I'm student of IDDP. So, sir, given the data that you presented, India ranks around third in global research output and even further about 6 patent filings, right? And yet our position in global innovation index is somewhat around 39, and even further, academia industry collaboration is much lower at 80. So given this contrast, like in your views, uh, what actually are the main reasons, like maybe funding structure or innovational incentives within academia, perhaps some relatively limited culture of risk taking in translating research into implementation?
I think it's autonomy. Our biggest problem is autonomy. I mean, the ministries are controlling too much, right? And with so many controls, like the funding is there, but you cannot spend it. Because in that time frame, you won't even be able to spend that government money, right? So I think the problem is basically the the autonomy of institutions. So all the problems also really lie here. I mean, when you look at the NEP, read the NEP document, the NEP has a full chapter dedicated to autonomy of institutions. Like in Stanford, in MIT, they don't go to some ministry to get some permissions, right? The buck stops at the board level. The board can decide everything. Appointment of new president, all of that is done at the board level. Nothing goes beyond board. In IITs, there is hardly any board, right? And what the board will have a ministry nominee, right? And anything which you want to discuss, the ministry nominee will say, send it to ministry. The moment it goes to ministry, it is similar to going to your head office, right? Nothing comes back. Once it's a one-way kind of a thing. And so even if the board chairman is Kumar Mangalam Birla, doesn't matter. The ministry nominee will have complete veto power on everything. If ministry says cannot be done, it cannot be done, right? With that kind of a autonomy in institutions, you can never build a world-class institution. So we need to trust people. I think institutions need to be made autonomous, and there will be some people who will misuse that, right? That will always happen. But when it happens, then there must be some way to correct that. The solution is not to remove the autonomy when there is a problem. The solution is to take action when a problem is found, and then keep correcting on the same line. I think that IIMs were given full autonomy. IIMs had too much complete autonomy, like any US university. But then some problems happened. They removed all the autonomy. They made them like any other institute. That is a problem. There are a lot of bureaucracy has entered all over institutions. That's the reason why everybody wants to become IAS officer. Right? And finally, they are the ones who are controlling everything. Their salary is what 2 lakh rupees, 2.5 lakh rupees. But why do you want to be an IAS officer? Because you have that power, that control. Finally, you can decide everything. As long as bureaucrats are controlling science, nothing can change. They have no idea how universities are run.
Thank you.
Okay, I think thank you so much. My intention was not to sound negative or anything. So it's more like frustration, right? Frustration of where we can be and where we are, right? That is what sometimes comes up as what I am saying, but it's more frustration. Not a lot of things can be done still in the system. I have done and shown it, but India could have been a developed country with the kind of talent pool that we have. The same Indians, go to US and then they do miracles, right? Why can't they do that in India? The systems which basically are stopping the people, and I think that frustration, sometimes is what makes me write. And otherwise, I have no intention to fight any government. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your sharing your knowledge. And now I request Professor Shantanu to present the memento. Harbi. So now we are at the end of this session, and I formally basically thank Professor Rao to spare time and share his learnings with us. And we hope that we will be conscious enough to retain these learnings and implement these in our day-to-day practices so as to have a good, successful research career. I also thank Professor Shantanu for supporting and guiding us for this event, as well as other staff, including Dr. Inderpal, who has played an active role in making this event happen. And also thank you to all the audience